Have you ever wondered what happens when the kindest person in the room finally runs out of patience? Carl Jung discovered something that still disturbs psychologists today. The most gentle, caring, sensitive souls don't just break down when they have had enough. They transform into something far more powerful and terrifying. Jung called these people empaths, and he spent decades documenting what happens when they stop absorbing everyone else's pain and finally snap. What he found wasn't a breakdown, it was an awakening, and the world was never ready for what came next. Today we're diving deep into Jung's most unsettling discovery about sensitive souls who stop people-pleasing. Because what happens next isn't what you'd expect. These individuals don't become cruel or cold. They become something much more dangerous. They become conscious. Jung's patient files from his Zurich clinic reveal a pattern that made his blood run cold. Sensitive people, empaths, highly perceptive individuals kept arriving at his door carrying the same invisible wounds. They had spent their entire lives being everyone's emotional support system. The friend who always listens, the child who keeps the family together, the partner who sacrifices everything to maintain peace. They came to Jung exhausted, isolated, unable to maintain normal relationships. But here's what shocked Jung most. These people weren't weak. They weren't victims of circumstance. They were psychological geniuses who had been collecting data on everyone around them for years. Jung realized these empaths possessed what he called differentiated perception. They could read micro-expressions that others missed completely. They sensed hidden emotions before people consciously felt them themselves. They detected lies instantly, felt unconscious tensions in every room, and saw through social masks with surgical precision. But they had learned to stay silent about what they saw. Society had taught them that speaking their truth made them too sensitive or overly emotional. So they absorbed everything in silence, blamed themselves for others' dysfunction, and apologized for simply existing. Jung documented something that still makes psychologists uncomfortable today. These empaths hadn't been broken by abuse. They had been studying it. When Jung asked them to describe their relationships, he expected scattered thoughts from damaged minds. What he discovered changed everything he thought he knew about sensitive people. These patients kept detailed mental records of every person who had ever hurt them. They knew their abusers' triggers, insecurities, and deepest fears. They had mapped emotional patterns with accuracy that surpassed Jung's own decades of training. They understood the psychology of manipulation better than the manipulators themselves. But they had never used this knowledge, not once, until something pushed them past their breaking point. Jung wrote in his private notes that the empath's mind isn't a victim's diary, it's a strategist's war room, waiting for the moment of activation. These sensitive souls had been playing chess while everyone else thought the game was checkers. And when they finally decided to make their move, the whole board changed. The transformation Jung documented didn't happen gradually. It happened in one explosive moment he called shadow integration under extreme duress. The trigger was always the same: profound betrayal by someone the empath had completely trusted and protected, a partner's infidelity after years of devotion, a parent's cruelty after decades of sacrifice, a friend's backstabbing after countless hours of support. The specific betrayal varied, but the pattern remained identical across every case. Jung studied. What made these betrayals devastating wasn't the act itself. It was the realization that the empath had seen the signs all along and ignored them. They had sensed the lie, felt the manipulation, detected the hidden agenda, but their need to believe the best in people, their compulsion to maintain harmony, their fear of being called too sensitive, had made them deny their own perceptions, and that denial finally shattered. Jung called this moment the clarity event, the instant when the empath's pattern recognition overwhelmed their need to make excuses for toxic behavior. Most people expected these sensitive souls to cry, scream, fall apart. Their abusers certainly expected emotional chaos. They were prepared to gaslight, deflect, blame. What happened instead terrified everyone involved. The empaths became unnaturally calm. Jung described it as the moment the victim realizes they've been playing a completely different game than everyone else understood. These sensitive people didn't attack. They didn't rage. They simply began to speak truth, not with cruelty, with clinical precision, like surgeons identifying each diseased organ before removing it. They revealed everything they had observed, catalogued, and silently endured. Every lie they had pretended to believe. Every manipulation they had allowed to work. Every hidden agenda they had seen, but never called out. Every micro-expression that revealed true intentions. Every pattern that predicted the inevitable betrayal. And they delivered this information not as accusations, but as documented facts. Observations collected over months or years of careful attention. Jung wrote that hell has no fury, like an empath who has finally learned to trust their own perceptions. Because these individuals weren't seeking revenge. They were claiming something far more powerful. Their own reality, their own truth, their own right to see clearly without apologizing for what they saw. This transformation wasn't temporary emotional outburst. Jung realized he was witnessing something he called shadow integration. The moment when someone stops denying the parts of themselves they were taught to hide. For empaths, their shadow wasn't evil or cruel. It was their suppressed intelligence, their silenced intuition, their denied strength, all the qualities society had trained them to consider inappropriate for someone so sensitive and kind. When they finally integrated these shadow aspects, they became what Jung called psychologically complete. Still capable of deep empathy, but now protected by conscious boundaries. Still able to feel everything, but now choosing what deserved their energy. Still perceptive of others' pain, but no longer required to absorb it as their own responsibility. The changes didn't stop at the psychological level. Jung documented how these transformed individuals' entire lives shifted within months. They left abusive relationships with strategic precision, documenting everything, planning exits that couldn't be sabotaged.